Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our interim budget meeting. Are there any proceedings we need to take care of at the start of the meeting, or can we just get right into it? Anyone have anything that we need to talk about or need to know at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning? If not, we'll turn this over to Matt, and he'll take us, start us off and guide us through the budget. Interim budget discussions. Thank you.
Great. Well, this is our favorite time of year, budget time, because it's the time of year that we breathe life into all of Council's plans and priorities, right? Geez, I can't remember off the top of my head how old we are as a county. It's 50 some odd plus, right? Come on, Todd. Yeah. Geez, I'm way off. So I hope you looked at the numbers close, because I prepared a lot of those. So 70 plus years. So there isn't a lot of mystery, I think, when it comes to provision of county services. We always kind of start where we left off, right? We're going to continue grading roads. We're going to continue controlling weeds. We're going to send the minibus up and down the road, picking people up and bringing them into town. So we always prepare the budget on the basis that we're going to continue current service levels. Back in July, we met with Council to kind of take the temperature, see where their heads are at. And from that meeting, there really wasn't anything crazy in terms of let's really shake things up. Let's stop grading roads. Let's stop spraying weeds, kind of a thing, right? A couple of big projects we talked about at that time we'll get into today. The water project, the pathways. Those will be some exciting conversations, I think, with Council. But let me jump on my soapbox. I have prepared a slide deck. It's attached in your AllNet agenda there, which is probably easier to see on your screens than on the big screens here. But I always love the opportunity to get on a soapbox, and here we go. Buckle up. I always like to start with the vision, mission, guiding principles. So the county's vision: to encourage and support sustainable growth and quality of life. Our mission: the County of Newell, through leadership and policy, provides services, structure, and stability. Guiding principles. And new in the budget narrative, beginning in 2021, we've tried to make a stronger link between the key priorities that departments are undertaking and how they link back to these guiding principles. So look for that. Seeking cooperation with individuals, governments, and organizations. Planning for the future growth and development of the municipality. Striving for the long-term financial stability of the municipality. Supporting the development and sustainability of a strong infrastructure. Providing services in a consistent and efficient manner, preserving land for agricultural use, and promoting open communication between staff, council, and the public. So everything we do should be filtered through these guiding principles and look at achieving our mission and vision. I don't know that we ever stop budgeting. Well, I don't think we ever stop planning on the financial side of things. It's just we're always in some kind of budget financial planning cycle. So where are we at? I had already mentioned July 5th, we had met with Council for direction. They provided that. Department heads and staff work hard between that date and September 30th, getting their draft numbers together. They submit it to Finance for review. Finance makes sure the numbers can all shake out, that we've got an affordable budget, and that what we're bringing to Council is actually achievable. We get together now. We kick that information out to Council. We like you to have 10, 14 days with it. There's a lot of information in the budget documents, the financial plans. You may have felt overwhelmed trying to review it. It's sometimes overwhelming trying to prepare it and keeping it up to date. We've done a lot of work in the last number of years to build out our long-term capital and financial plan. We have a database that we can forecast 20 years of capital information in. We don't give you 20 years, we only gave you 10. You're welcome. but it's been very valuable to us in terms of being able to make different assumptions and model potential different outcomes and see where that leads the county. Me personally, I always want to see my net worth increasing, and I think it's the same thing on the county side. We want to see the county's net worth increasing over time. So we're here, we're going to review the budget, we're going to kick it around. If there's anything ugly in there that you want to make look pretty, we're going to do that. We want council to be comfortable with the budget that you approve in December. So we're going to take notes today. We're going to probably change a couple of numbers. We might add a few things, take a few things away. That's all right. It's just a draft that we've got today. After these meetings, if we need tomorrow as well, we'll go back, tidy up the numbers, and then we'll bring back a final draft for you to approve December 9th. So what does that mean when you approve an interim budget? Well, the numbers can still change. So in the interim budget, we make a whole bunch of assumptions about where taxes are going. So I'm going to unpack the assumptions on tax policy for you a little bit later. Taxes won't really be set until after we know what assessment figures are, and we have to wait till February 28th to get assessment figures. So the tax number today, don't get too hung up on where the taxes are. We've proposed a small increase, but that's not set in stone today. So you can approve an interim budget and we can change the tax policy in the final budget. We don't know what the requisitions are, so we don't know what we're going to owe the school foundation or what Newell Housing, they just changed their name, is going to be asking for. We don't control that. They tell us what we're going to pay, and we levy it and we pay it out of our control. What is more set in stone, I would say, is the capital projects. So a lot of the capital projects, because they are so significant, they take a lot of time to plan. Once we pass the interim budget, my staff will get to work building tender packages, doing the legwork to get the capital budget in motion. So if there is something on your 2022 capital project list that you're not quite comfortable with, you can pump the brakes right now and say, let's hold off on that one. We need more information. Maybe it'll get rolled into final budget, but we don't want to give the stamp of approval today. We can do that.
Matt, with regard to specific, like if we consider specific line items, I mean, it all can be changed prior, right? Like if we approve and have a discussion around something, it can be revisited. And that's the assumption as well, right? That if today we decided to do something a month, 2 months from now, we have a different perspective and think it needs to be, that's all, we're good with all of that, right?
Right. The budget is a plan, and plans change. We can only spend money that's been approved in a budget is for an emergency or legally required to be paid. So in a budget or separate resolution of council, right? So we meet a couple of times every month. You can approve spending all throughout the year. I would discourage entertaining budget requests throughout the year. We've tried really hard to corral everything into the planning process where at this time we're looking at everything, right? Big picture. As budget requests come in through the year, and there's going to be some of those that are unavoidable, but we try our hardest to put everything on the table so you can have all the information and decide if we do this, what is the impact long term. And in a world of scarce resources where we don't get to have everything that we would like to have, it's kind of nice to have everything on the table so you know what you're picking and choosing from, kind of a thing. But it's fluid. Absolutely, it's fluid. Final budget we'll have to you in April with, and if things are really crazy with final assessment numbers, which we're hoping they're not going to be at the end of February, then we can have some of those conversations leading up to the final budget approval. So some of the things you'll see in the budget package that fell out of the budget planning meeting in July: Emerson Bridge Park, cell phone reception upgrades, some improvements to some of the sites there, power, water, sewer to 11 sites, water to 6 sites. At that time, we didn't have grant funding approved. We now have that as a grant-funded project, so that's good news for us. Rural Water Project Phase 2, $15 million for 732 new service connections. Municipal Services is investigating some alternative gravel specifications, see if they can work some magic on making washboard disappear. So that's rolled in. Greater operator training to improve on their 4-pass system. That's been rolled in. That's a $40,000 touch. And then repairs and maintenance to fire halls, taking care of some overhead doors, installing man doors, some ground level water fill, and some station wear. So we've talked about team. Everybody on the team has a role. What are our roles in the budget process? Well, we've got spenders and we've got guardians. So your spenders are your department heads. We expect them to spend money. They get credit for delivering high quality services to your residents, but they need money to make it happen. They need funds to accomplish that service delivery. The guardians, so that's around the horseshoe here. This table, that's council and finance. Our role: keep taxes and debt levels at reasonable levels and make sure there's proper consideration of the impact of proposed expenditures. MGA, it wouldn't be a valuable slide deck if we didn't put some references to the MGA in here. So MGA 242.2, a council may adopt an interim operating budget for part of a calendar year, which is what we're doing. MGA 283.12, each municipality must prepare a written plan respecting its anticipated financial operations over a period of at least the next 3 financial years. So in the budget documents that you received, you have the 2022 budget year plus 3 additional forecast years, so we've met that. MGA 283.1 sub 3, each municipality must prepare a written plan respecting its anticipated capital property additions over a period of at least the next 5 financial years. You get 10. MGA 283.1 sub 6, council must annually review and update its financial and capital plan. We're doing today. And MGA 248.1 sub 1, a council may adopt an annual budget in a format that is consistent with its financial statements. I think we're one of few municipalities that actually does that. The way we present our budget is the way you're going to see the numbers show up at the end of the year in your financial statements. We call things what they are. Some places will call transfers from reserves revenue. That's not revenue. It was revenue years ago and now it's in your piggy bank being saved. So we try really hard to take the mystery out of the numbers. So if there's any mystery left in the numbers, let us know and we'll try and unpack it and make it clearer. All right, so our interim budget summary, and I couldn't decide whether I did this slide or this other slide, which you need eagle eyes to see first. So we're looking at a proposed municipal property tax increase of 1.76% or $538,000. Operating expenses increase slightly, 0.15% or $45,000. That's basically a budget freeze in my eyes. An annual surplus of $17.5 million, which sounds like a lot of dollars, but we'll try and unpack what a surplus is used for a little bit later. Capital grants, we expect to come in around 10.6 million. We're going to do a gravel crush next year. That'll cost you 1.5 estimated. Tangible capital asset acquisition, so that's your graders, road improvements, things like that, coming in at 19.3 million, and we will repay debt of 1.9 million. So I talked about we make assumptions when we prepare our budget and our financial plans. One of my favorite quotes comes from a British statistician, George E.P. Box, who said, "All models are wrong, but some are useful." So when we're looking far off into the future, I guarantee you the numbers are wrong, but they're useful. They give you a pattern of spend and what's coming at you. So we try not to get too hung up on anything that's beyond the budget year that we're looking at. So 2022 budget year is really what you need to focus on. The out years, they're important, but we'll have a chance to finesse those numbers each year moving forward. In terms of tax policy, so the question came up before the meeting, what are our expectations for linear? Geez, I wish I knew where that was going. Thankfully, the province backtracked on gutting linear assessment on the county. We're highly dependent on linear tax dollars to deliver services for our ratepayers. In the interim budget, the assumption we made is we're probably going to take a haircut on linear assessment. So, and whether it's enough or not enough, we estimated a 2.5% decline, which is equivalent to $29 million in assessed value evaporating there. To compensate for that, we've proposed increasing the non-residential tax rate by 2.5%. Same idea for residential, increased by 2.5%. We have a small business tax rate, which is set at 75% to the non-residential rate. Police costing model, so this is a nice surprise from the province a few years ago who have downloaded those costs. We break out a police costing model tax rate on tax notices so everybody can see how much of their dollars is going to support that. That'll come in. We'll adjust that in our final budget, and a discount of 2.5% for taxes paid by June 15th. We flipped that equation a few years ago. We used to penalize you by 3% if you were late on June 15th, and we thought, you know what, let's try the carrot before the stick. So if you get your taxes paid by June 15th, you get a little discount. And it seems to have worked all right. Not everybody takes advantage of it, but it does give you an incentive to settle your tax bill. In terms of operating expenses, one of our biggest line items is salaries, wages, benefits. Cost of living adjustment in 2022 of 1%. That's in line with what the union negotiated, and 2% in 2023 and on. We've always kind of been around 2% at the county. We have actually an excellent union here. The last round of negotiations, they proposed 0%, 1%, 2%. I think we got that negotiation done in record time, 2 hours compared to days. So they're very in tune with the economic climate, and that's where we're at for cost of living adjustment. I get concerned when I see inflation rates north of 4% because we're not keeping pace with that. Hopefully that's a blip, but we don't want to be in a situation where 3 years down the line we have to be looking at larger cost of living increases to catch up for what inflation has eroded on our staff. In terms of service levels, really, I've said this already, we start where we left off, but there are enhancements in some levels. Emerson Bridge Park, we're looking for some support in IT with a co-op student. And co-op students, interns, they're pretty great for feeding into our succession planning. If we find a real keener, we like to hang on to them. And the planning and development intern, which Jeff talked about at orientation. All right, so you can, maybe if you've got this slide in front of you on your screen, you can kind of see what's going on there. I can't see. I got to pop it up here. Give me 2 seconds. So I did want to spend just a minute to kind of walk through our budget format. And Councillor Screever, make sure I answer all your questions that you sent in this morning about different things. So we start with property taxes. Included in property taxes are the requisition amounts that you have to hang on to. So that second line that says less requisitions, that's what you have to send to the Alberta School Foundation and the Newell Seniors, and is that it? And DIP, Designated Industrial Property Requisition. So there's a few requisitions you don't control. You get told to raise it and then who to send it to. So that net municipal property tax line is what you actually have to work with in terms of property taxes, right? So we're looking at 31.2 million in net municipal property taxes for 2022, a 1.76% increase. In the budget by function document, there's a summary of how budget has changed over time. We've taken a haircut, just about 7.5% over the last few years. So we're still below where we used to be on the property tax line. We used to be closer to 33, 34 million raised there. So total revenue, we're down 2.3 million. The biggest change there is on the special levy line. 2.15 is an estimated local improvement tax levy that will be levied on the North Headgates subdivision. That work's not done. We were hoping to have that tax bylaw approved before the end of the year. It's not likely going to happen because there's still work happening there. So in our final budget, we'll probably up the special levy by that amount, and you'll see that happen once that work is complete there. A few minor changes on the other lines there. We typically budget conservative on the revenue side of things, so we like to budget low, come in high for the revenues, and the opposite's true for the expense side of things. We like to budget a little bit lower, have some flexibility in the budget lines to respond to any kind of reactionary things that we have to respond to. There's always wild cards. COVID's been a wild card. The soil erosion we experienced this year was a wild card. How many times it's going to snow and our guys have to go out and plow roads, that's a wild card as well. So we do budget a little bit higher on the expense side of things, and we like to come in under budget, not over budget. We get to revenue less total expenses, your annual surplus deficit before the undernoted. In that other section, that's where capital grants come in to your income statement. So we're looking at government transfers for capital. That'll be your MSI grant, federal gas tax fund grant coming in, 10.5. And we've really just got a high level estimate in there for the rural water phase 2 project. We're still waiting on formal approval from the minister for that rural water project. We haven't done a lot of legwork to figure out how that's going to roll out and how council may want to bridge finance that. So operating surplus plus your capital funds, you get the annual surplus of 17.5. Sounds like a lot of money, 17.5 million. That 10 million you have to spend on capital, and the capital coming out comes later in your cash flow statement. So everything that we've talked about so far, you'll see on your consolidated statement of financial activities in the financial statements at year end, and everything to come now, we're into a cash flow statement. Cash is king. So you've got 17.5, we're going to add back amortization to that because amortization is a non-cash expense. So we're really working with 24.6 million. That net change in non-cash assets and liabilities line, that is changes in balance sheet items. So your accounts receivable, and what we have happening here is the gravel crush for 1.5 million. And we also have local improvement tax receivable being relieved. So when we recognize a local improvement tax, we set that up as a receivable, and depending on the number of years that it takes to pay that back, each year reduces that receivable amount until it's settled, kind of a thing. So that's what you see in net change in non-cash assets and liabilities, purchasing inventory and settling receivables. Looking at the capital activity section, acquisition of TCA, 19.3 million. That's your roads, water, sewer, replacing vehicles, machinery, and equipment. Each department head will kind of talk about the philosophy behind why and when they replace things. We've been experimenting with stress testing things a little bit more at the county. So we used to typically replace a grader every 5 years. We've pushed that out to 10 and 10,000 hours. We start having to rebuild engines and things like that around that 10,000 hour mark. Reliability of our graders is probably more important than reliability of our printers, right? We have lots of other printers in the building, so I've asked IT, instead of replacing some of these printers that are scheduled based on useful life, just let them fail. Let's see how long they can go. And so we are very aware internally of the dollars we spend on capital. It's expensive. We are playing around with stress testing some of that stuff. We probably don't want to stress test something like the minibus that carries our seniors around. Like, the minibus is still good. Why would we replace it at year 5? Well, the minibus needs to be good. We're not going to play around with that one. So as you look at the listing for capital projects, capital items in 2022, feel free to push back on some of our staff and ask what their philosophy is on that. They're comfortable answering those things. All right, so back, we're capital activities. We're going to spend 19.3 on capital. We do budget for some of the proceeds on disposal when we sell trucks or graders. That's at 463 coming in. Had a question, why aren't we budgeting for investing activities? That for me is just, is it investment or cash? It's all about cash. So we don't worry too much about budgeting what is going to happen on that investing line. If we need to pull from our investments, we pull. Sometimes we park our short-term cash in high-interest savings accounts. Sometimes bonds are looking better. So it just depends where the market's at, and that kind of ebbs and flows. So nothing on that investing line. Financing activity, so this is your debt, right? If we're going to borrow what we have to repay, we don't have any borrowing projected for next year, apart from the North Headgates property. If that gets put into next year, we will be borrowing that $2 million, which is offset with that local improvement tax receivable. So that debt gets repaid by the property owners that benefit from that improvement. But we will be repaying $1.9 million. That consists of local improvements in Scandia, Rolling Hills, Tilly, and our water project debt from the first phase there. We roll all that stuff up together, and we're left with $2.5 million extra in cash, and that we transfer to our restricted surplus, your piggy bank for future capital asset replacement. I would suggest that $2.5 million is actually not enough long term. We should probably be saving more in our restricted surplus. But when times are tight, you can't always be setting extra dollars aside. So it's better than needing to draw, so seeing a transfer from. But you will see over time, depending on the capital plan, sometimes we're saving and other times we're pulling. If you look at that 10-year capital plan, one of the big items coming up is overlays. So of all the pavement that we laid, we're coming up to the 20-year mark, and we're going to need to do the overlays. And there were some years where there were some pretty big pavement projects. And you're going to have, I can't remember which year it is, but there's a year that we're going to spend a lot of money doing overlay projects. So $17.5 million in surplus translates into $2.5 million in the piggy bank being added to the piggy bank at the end of the year. So I hope that was helpful. We really do try to take the mystery out of the numbers and give it to you straight from beginning to end. If anything's confusing still, I'm really happy to sit down and do a workshop and walk everybody through so you know what the numbers are telling you there. Where are we at here? All right, net worth. So back to my earlier comment. If I'm not growing my wealth, I'm not a happy person personally. The county should also be in a position where they're growing their wealth. I've got a slide coming up that hopefully demonstrates it's just a natural progression that your net worth at the county is going to grow because you replace old things that were cheap with new things that have gone through the roof in terms of their cost, right? So net worth, this is your, essentially it's your balance sheet, a picture of your balance sheet over the last 10 years and how that has changed over time. So your non-financial assets, which is inventory, so the gravel piles outside, your graders, the value left in your roads, the value left in your sewer systems, water systems. So in accounting speak, you've got 196 million in non-financial assets. That's value ready to work into the future for your ratepayers. That value gets eroded through an amortization charge. So each year that's going to be eroded, and then we reinvest. The provincial government expects you to invest at least your average 5-year amortization charge back into capital. So keep that in mind. There's an expectation that you're maintaining capital. It's one of the things that you will be judged on as a council by our good friends at Municipal Affairs. They issue a report at the end of each year, municipal indicators. There's a bunch of flags. We don't want any of the flags going off if we can avoid it. And we haven't been in a position where that happens. Financial assets. So this is where everybody oohs and ahs over the county's, 90 some odd million dollars in our investment portfolio. It's not enough. I know $90 million sounds like a lot. You have a lot of roads. We have a lot of water lines. The 90 million actually isn't enough. That 90 million works just about as hard as farmland assessment in the county. It has actually worked harder than farmland assessment the last couple of years. So that's a benefit to our ratepayers, having that socked away. It's working, it's growing. It's going to be available when you have to replace those bridges, do those overlays. You're going to pull from there. I don't think it's enough. And then your liabilities, 13 million. So that's what you owe in debt, accounts payable at year end. You take your red, your green, subtract your liabilities, and that's your net worth, right? So we've done all right. You might ask, what happened in 2016 that you took like a $30 million hit to your net worth? Well, we transferred assets to NRSC. We managed the regional water project and transferred those assets to them. So those assets are for them to manage. Whoever's sitting on the NRSC board, you want to make sure that they have a philosophy that they've got assets available to replace those physical assets when the time comes, so that we're not sitting with a financial shock when those things do need to be replaced. So net worth, I want to see it grow, and it should naturally be growing. If you can see this slide, sustainable infrastructure. I mean, we come together, we're looking at the 2022 budget, right? So a year. But we have to take a longer view. That's why we've built out a database with 20 years of of capital items in it. This is a real life example that will support what I'm saying about your $90 million in restricted surplus isn't enough, because we're replacing cheap things with expensive things. So these are two bridge files. They're in the budget to be replaced. Bridge file 76697. If you go into the accounting records, it's on the books for $3,000. So $3,000 is the 1968 cost. The estimate to replace it in 2022 is $385,000. At the end of 2020, go ahead.
Where is this one located? Just curious.
Mark, do you know off the top of your head? Yeah. Sorry, we can get locations for you. So at the end of 2020, we had 73% of our accumulated amortization saved in our restricted surplus funds. So if we say, all right, we've saved 73% of that $3,000 original cost, we could say, in theory, we've got $2,190 in our piggy bank to replace this bridge pile. We were lucky, we got 75% STIP grant funding to replace this bridge. So we're only on the hook for 25% of that 385,000. So we need 96,250. We only have 2,190 specifically for this in the bank. We're 94,000 short. These are pretty big orders of magnitude being short, right? Same idea for bridge piles 72744. I won't go through all those numbers. You get the idea. But this is our challenge, right? Administratively, we're trying to find what's that sweet spot of saving the right amount. So we need to be really clear on what's an appropriate surplus. You need a surplus. So when your ratepayers grill you and say, you're budgeting for a surplus. Of course we're budgeting for a surplus. We got bridge piles to replace that are orders of magnitude more expensive than they were when we put them in. We think you want a bridge. We could remove the bridges and just have, but that's going to shut the economy down, right? So hopefully some of these things will resonate with ratepayers as you unpack them. I'm taking too long. We provide services. To provide services, we need money. Where do we get the money? Taxes is the big one. User fees, grants, you can borrow or you can take from the piggy bank, right? So those are your main sources that you can choose for funding. User fees, campground, we're looking at trying to take a little bit more for those sites that have an enhanced service level. Minibus, we've been increasing $2 per trip the last couple of years. Utilities were around a 3% increase being proposed. Grants, MSI, federal gas tax, ASB gets a few operating grants there. Debt, so your debt limit, you could borrow up to 58 million. I would never encourage you to borrow up to 58 million, but I do think there's some advantages to using debt to finance things. If our investment portfolio is pulling in 5% and we can borrow at 1%, I'll always encourage you to borrow. So the Rainier Fire Hall, a few years down the road, being proposed, I'd suggest, if rates are low like they are today, that you borrow and you leave your investments working for you. Debt service limit, so this is your annual payment that Municipal Affairs says you can afford, is just about 10 million. We're currently only at just under 5 million outstanding. Most of the county's debt's going to be retired by 2023 because it relates to the water project. So you do have room to borrow and to service debt. Restricted surplus, we were just under 100 million at the end of 2020. Like I said, the accumulated amortization you have set aside in funds, 73% for infrastructure, 88% for facilities, and 116% for vehicles, machinery, and equipment. This, like our restricted surplus policy and what we're doing there is critical component of how we manage our assets and make sure that we're not begging the province to replace a bridge for us when it needs to be replaced. I hate being vulnerable and being in a position where you can't move on a project that needs to be moved on because you don't have the funds and the province isn't grant funding things, right? So I think we want to be in a position, and we've been lucky to be in a position at the county where we're relatively self-sufficient. We're happy to take the grants. Absolutely, we'll look for those grant dollars, but if something needs to be replaced to keep the economy and our ratepayers moving, we want to make sure we can do that. I'm sorry, staff, I'm revisiting some old slides here, but I think it's important. So who pays for what? Who should pay for what in the county? And the what can be categorized into a few service types. And I think this will frame where you go back to for the who. depending on the service type. So private service benefits specific individuals, groups, or businesses. It's possible to prevent someone from using the service. So we're talking about seats on the minibus. I know who's sitting on the minibus. Campers at a campsite, I can identify them. It's pretty easy. That's a pretty good candidate for user fees. Mixed service, now we're into gray territory. It benefits the general public as well as the specific individual, group, or business using the service. We're talking pathways, recreation centers, right? So society benefits from good health, but the person using it, you can identify them and you could charge them something for it. So maybe there's a subsidy and maybe there's a user fee combo. What level each of those are at is for council to debate. And the final one there, public service, benefits the general public. It's impossible to exclude somebody from using it or enjoying the benefits provided by the service. Roads is kind of the common example. I mean, we could probably put toll booths on every road if we wanted to. The technology probably exists for us to track. But man, you're going to hire a whole bunch more administrative people to see that thing through, right? So roads, we haven't got too uptight about, parking people at every corner and asking for a toonie to drive the next mile, kind of a thing, right? So keep these things in mind as we go throughout and evaluate the programs and services provided through the budget. Which one is private, what's mixed, what's public, because that should inform how we fund things. My buckets, private, mixed, public. Tax goes into public and mixed, user fees into private and supporting your mixed services. I am a big proponent of user fees, and not in terms of raising revenue, but just in terms of giving people a vote, right? I hate burying things in people's tax bill. If you value something and you put the cash out to purchase it, that's a signal. And when people stop putting the money out to purchase a thing, that's a signal, right? That you need to change. When we bury the cost of service in the tax bill, you just distort all those signals that you could potentially get from user fees. Yeah, so what price should be charged? Primary economic rationale for user charges is to encourage the efficient use of resources. So when we go back to our guiding principles of consistent and efficient service, when I'm thinking efficient, I'm thinking what people actually value. And a lot of times we make assumptions that this is the thing that people value and we put a program in place. But if you don't have that price signal to really guide you, it's pretty hard to say. Charging prices lower or higher than the efficient price means that too much or too little of the service in question will be produced, viewed from the perspective of what society as a whole wants. Oh, these are small again. I'm good. All right. Of your ratepayers, how many of them enjoy paying their tax bill? We've actually had people come in to the office and say, I can't believe how cheap my farmland taxes are, because they also farm in another municipal district. So I don't think that is the common refrain. Everybody hates paying taxes, right? We're always getting ripped off by government. But I think we have a pretty good track record in Newell for being very competitive on the tax front. So residential, this information here is all available from municipal affairs, financial information returns that get filed by each municipality. All of that information is available in their open government portal. So if we look here, how competitive are we in terms of residential taxes? Well, we're at 98.1% of the average. We're a little bit below, a couple of percent. We rank 32 out of 63 municipalities for our residential tax rate. farmland. And I will, for the new members, just let you know, we have been increasing the farmland mill rate by 0.75 each year over the last number of years. We're proposing to continue that trajectory until the farmland tax rate is equal to the non-residential tax rate. You're like increasing my farmland taxes by 16%. Well, 16%, and I don't want to minimize farmland taxes, but 16% of what you pay on a quarter section for taxes, it actually isn't, in dollar terms, that significant. So we're on that trajectory. We've been advertising that in our budget narrative for a number of years now. Even with those increases, we're still, in 2021, 30% below the average. That's a pretty good discount for farming in Newell, I think. Could be lower, we could go lower, we could be higher, wherever council wants to go with that one. Farmland, non-residential. So we are 35.2% below the average rate of all MDs. We rank 13 out of 63. Who's lower than us? Well, Wheatland, Parkland, Foothills, Clearwater, Greenview, Rocky View, Ranchland, Bighorn, Leduc, Yellowhead, Cypress. The lowest is Lacombe at the 5.54. So how is it possible that we provide below average tax rates? Because we have above average assessment. Our 2021 equalized assessment, we were 126.6% above average of all MDs in the province. So this is why when the province last year was talking about gutting our linear assessment, we got really excited at the county and started running scenarios and thinking about what can we cut and what can we do different. Because if your assessment goes down, there's only two sides to the equation, right? If assessment goes down and you want the same tax dollar, well, tax rate has to go up, right? So we want to encourage growth in the county so our assessment goes up and we can keep those really competitive tax rates and hopefully draw people here. I'll step down from my soapbox. I wanted to introduce a few key concepts there. In terms of funding, we've got room to borrow. We're at the provinces and the federal government's mercy when it comes to grants. We do have room on tax rates. Residential, you're probably where you need to be on average, but you do have room in that farmland and non-residential space to increase and still be competitive. But with that, I will open it up to any questions. And I will say, I believe that Sandra is joined in on our live stream. We've always had a real good relationship with the press and being open. I think all of my staff are comfortable with any question that a councillor may want to throw at them. So, you know, feel free to put us on the hot seat. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, I think they say. We're fully transparent. The bulletin gets the same budget binder that council gets, and I think it's really worked to our advantage over time, where it just really takes the mystery out of things, because there really isn't too much mystery there. But I think as we progress, we've got the agenda. The agenda is listed in order of how department heads will present. We try to keep it pretty high level. So we do have a slide deck there that highlights some of the major changes between last year and this year. But then we leave it to department heads to talk about what they want. We assume that council has been through the budget package. You've got your list of questions, and when the related department comes up, feel free to grill them, and let's get comfortable.
Councillor Screevy, you had a question?
There's a black button on the right side, Councillor Screever, Master Power.
There we go. So as far as financial assets go, we're at 111 million. Is that right? You said that's low. What, in your opinion, what should we be at?
I'd like to get to the spot, and it's been a lot. So long as we're making progress on that, the percent of accumulated amortization that we have set aside, I'd like to be over 100% of the accumulated amortization charge. So that amortization charge is based on historic costs. So the $3,000 bridge file that we're saving, we have a policy in place for how we save and set aside funds in restricted surplus. For infrastructure, the policy reads not less than 50% of the annual amortization charge. The last couple of years, we've actually set aside 100% of the annual amortization charge. So I think you want to be at least 100% of the historic costs set aside. But even with that, you don't have the funds available to take care of the assets that we've got. So we probably need to be north of that. If the province will come through on, their update to the MSI grant program, the local government fiscal framework, with a firm commitment on capital funding, which they had a firm commitment on your MSI grant funding, and that changed, several iterations, kind of a thing. So I think you need to be, once we get to 100% of the accumulated amortization charge, we'll throw a party. We'll celebrate that milestone, but you need to keep going.
What is that limit right now, the accumulated amortization? Do we have an estimate on that?
We're at 73% of the accumulated amortization charge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
With that, if there's no additional questions, we'll dive into corporate services. Wayne and Stuart.
Good morning, Council. And thanks, Matt, for providing that foundation for the discussions that's going to take place here today. Corporate services covers off a number of areas. We're wanting to start off with fire and emergency services. Then we'll move on to safety services. Please feel free as we're going through to ask questions. We're here to provide information and hopefully provide answers for any questions that you might have as we go through this. Stuart, of course, is in charge of and assists the fire departments. This first section of the discussion this morning is going to have to do with his area of responsibility. And we'll just go ahead and jump into the budget for the fire services here right now.
All right, thank you, Reeve Council, for having me come in this morning and talk on our 2022 budget coming up here. We've done our best to work through with the consultation of all the fire chiefs their needs and wants for 2022, and we do have some extra costs asked for in some areas. And then, of course, we have some capital projects that currently are underway or going to be underway that we have that I'd like to have some discussion about, in particular about some overages and things like that. So as we see on this slide here, we have a 1.4% increase, and for the contracted services, it works out to be 33.4K over. Gem Fire Hall overhead doors. I talked to previous council about how these doors in Gem are old, not very well insulated, and the request from the fire chief there was to have the doors replaced to get a little better energy efficiency within that fire hall, and that's to the cost of about $13,000. In the Tilly Fire Hall, we have a couple things. When the fire hall was originally built roughly 15 years ago, a storage bay was part of that construction. That storage bay, the only way to access it currently is from the outside. So you have to go out of the fire hall, walk around the building, open the door to get into the storage area. And the fire chief and the fire department personnel would like to see a nice big access door from the bay section, apparatus bay section, into the storage room in order to allow them to pull tables out for special events and the things that are in this storage room. So there was a cost for that, as well as currently for the Tilly Fire Hall to fill their fire trucks, they have to get on top of the fire truck and actually put the water fill in through the top into the truck. As we've learned over years, not the safest thing in the world to do, because we have equipment and hose that's lying on top of that truck that has potential for firefighters to trip and fall off the top, and the top of the truck is roughly 10 feet high, so it would be quite the fall. So the request from the fire chief was, could we lower the water down to one central spot within the fire hall to allow our hose to connect to it and then fill through the side of the truck, and then nobody's ever getting on top of the truck. So I thought from a safety perspective, that was a fantastic thing. The total cost for those things in Tilly is about $7,000. And then, of course, we have our conferences and travel. Of course, with COVID over the last couple of years, that hasn't been so much. But I do encourage my fire chiefs in particular to attend things like the Alberta Fire Chiefs Conference, where there's a lot of good networking and learning to be done there on different tactics that happen within the fire service. So that's one particular area of conference that we like, as well as there are a few others out there for roughly $6.7 thousand. Materials, supplies, and utilities throughout the county is $34,600, and we see IT hardware refresh of $12.6 thousand, and that is for some of our fire halls don't have internet connection in them currently, and we'd like to put a nice hub system into those fire halls, and it kind of works as a two-purpose thing. Facilities currently is working on getting a system in where we could monitor temperatures within the fire halls to know that if the furnace goes out in the fire hall, it gets too cold, they can get a service guy out there promptly to get things repaired. These fire trucks hold anywhere from 750 to upwards of 3,000 gallons of water, and we definitely don't want our piping systems within the fire trucks to freeze, so I think this is a very good thing. As well as I have weather stations in these areas where I can't see what the weather is doing right now in those areas, just simply because of no internet service. So that'd be an improvement of $12,000. Fire hose replacement is another one that is out there that we need some replacement done. And then, of course, station wear and other gear. And I think that's on our budget line, 2590. I've requested an increase throughout the departments on that. And that's simply our fire department personnel go out to special events and do things on behalf of the fire department, which is truly on behalf of the County of Newell. So to put our best foot forward, put a little bit of pride within the fire departments, I thought it would be a great idea if they had fire uniforms to display who they are and what department they were from within the County of Newell. So that works out to be about a $7,000 increase over our budgets, and that increase will probably decrease over the years. It's in the initial cost to get everybody outfitted within the County of Newell. So it is a little bit pricey to start off, but once that's done, it's only basically new personnel, or if you get big and fat like myself and you need more gear or new clothes, you would get it replaced then. So. Then, of course, we have transfers to organizations. So we have our four municipalities there, Brooks, Bassano, Rosemary, and Dutchess, with their transfer of funds that come back across into the County of Newell to help us out. Then we have our capital expenditures of $246,000. The Patricia Fire Hall, something I'm going to be bringing to you this Thursday with an overage of $204,000 on that project currently. That was a project that was approved by council for looking for options and the best possible solution this year, and we have got a study done, and I will be presenting that to you on Thursday. So unfortunately, we're a little bit over on what my original budget costs were, and a lot of that is probably due to COVID, as well as the delay in the build, which will be about 2023 is what the construction project has told us that would start. And of course, there's an increase in products over each year that we don't build within the county. So design is in 2022, and you can see the build is in 2023 for $1.3 million. Then we have some vehicle extrication equipment, and it equates to about $42,000 in Rolling Hills and Rosemary. So both of these fire halls, Rosemary received a new light-duty rescue truck last year in their community, and Rolling Hills Fire is currently getting a rapid response vehicle into their fire department. So with that, they are requesting that they have vehicle extrication equipment that they can put into their fire trucks, and I thought it was a reasonable request for this. Simply, Rolling Hills Fire is so far out there, and even to have Tilly come and respond to them, it'd take 25 to 30 minutes for Tilly to get to their most outer areas of Rolling Hills. So we have what's called a golden hour, that we want to get people out of the vehicle and into the hospital. And if you take the time it gets called out, the time the fire hall responds, the time Tilly gets to get there, it really doesn't leave a lot of time to get that person out of the vehicle. That typically takes 10, 15 minutes on a decent vehicle extrication. Sometimes they can take longer, but you take another 10 or 15 minutes and then you have your drive back to the hospital. So we end up over that golden hour that we're looking for. So that's kind of my justification of why I think Rolling Hills and Rosemary should have the vehicle extrication equipment in their areas. Oh, I did it again, didn't I? There you go. Okay, so we have expenses of $2.6 million, right? Sorry, I'm saying that wrong. Sorry. So rural fire services contract is an extra $3,000, and the emergency management preparedness program is $5,000. And currently in capital, there's nothing there. Do we have questions? Please.
Stuart, the other day at Castles, you had said that you weren't able to finish the project in Rolling Hills, and some of it had to go forward to 2022. So was that money, was it just not spent in 2021 and it's moved to 22, or was it spent elsewhere and it's building extra funds for that?
Through the chair to Councillor Johnson, part of the funds have been spent already this year. We've needed to get a set of blueprints made for the renovation, and the final draft, or not final draft, but the final copy was just sent to me last week. So there was a cost of about $3,000 for that. But other than that, no other money has been set forward or has been spent on that capital project, except for Public Works currently is working on putting the fenced area within the compound. So they're actually almost finished doing that, and that would be a cost to us on the renovation of about $25,000. Other than that, nothing else has been spent, and we're getting to a stage where we're in November, weather's getting colder, it's -10 out today. Costs are going to rise for concrete and things like that. So the thought is to hold on this project till spring of 2022 and ask for the monies to be reallocated into 2022 to carry on with that project. All right, so moving on. Okay, we're going to just move on from this one.
I had a question as well about Patricia. So I see you want to build a new fire station. So what is the 240,000 spent on renovations or preparing if we're going to build a new fire station?
For Patricia Fire Hall?
Yeah, because you have 240 for, it's not the build, you have 240 in for this year. So what is that money being spent on?
So far this year, we spent...
I mean 2022, it started this year, I mean 2022 in the budget. You have 204,000. That's just the design, it says, but the build's in 2023, so it must not be just the design for 204.
Right, so for this year, Council approved an interim budget of $1 million for this project. After we sent out to the construction property group, they came back with a study that shows that that $1 million isn't enough anymore, and we need a little bit more money. So that's where that additional 204 added onto the budget for 22 is asked for.
Thank you. This is assuming that we go with a brand new fire station in Patricia, correct?
100% correct. And again, on Thursday, I'm coming to present to you those options on a brand new build compared to adding on to the existing fire hall that we have. And we can see the cost comparisons all together on Thursday on that.
Councillor Crispin, please go ahead.
Reeve Douglas, I'm sorry, Reeve Dirksen, same neighborhood, Just deja vu for a minute. I just want to bring some clarity that we haven't heard yet from the fire department report. And for me, it would be good information to have, so I want to share. Bazzano, Dutchess, and Rosemary have an agreement with the county whereby they pay 50% of the operating expenses for the fire department, okay? 100% of the wheeled equipment within the County of Newell, whether it's a hamlet or the town or the village, is all purchased and paid for by the county. So that is a piece of information that I think you need to keep in your minds. 100% of wheeled equipment is owned by the County of Newell, and 50% of operating within the municipalities. Matt?
The county funds 90% of the operating.
I'm sorry, that was an old one. Sorry, 90% of the operating in those mini munis. Okay? So it is a substantial investment in Bazzano, Dutchess, and Rosemary on the fire department on behalf of the County of Newell.
Mr. Screever, please.
Just wondering, just to ask under the fire services, Lake Newell Resort, that's sufficient to be serviced by Brooks, is that correct?
Lake Newell Resort is roughly 13 minutes response time from Brooks, from the time the people get in the fire truck. So at this time, it's right there. It's right on the edge of what insurance would really like to see for response time. I think the big plus out at Lake Newell Resort also is they have the fire hydrant system that's out there, which gives them water and things like that. So currently, yes, I think it's, yeah. All right. So with that, I do believe that my portion is complete here on things that I've asked for extra stuff within the fire departments. So if there's any other questions, I'd certainly be happy to take them right now.
Seeing none, I guess we can carry on. Thank you.
Okay, so
Thank you.
the next discussion would be on corporate services, which is function 14. Safety services, sorry.
I'll suggest we take a break after this presentation, if council's good with that. Okay.
Barry promised that hers was going to be 45 minutes long.
We'll be floating out of here by the
Thank you. All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to present the safety budget to you. I don't visit your chambers very often, so again, I'm going to make this short and sweet, hopefully very easy. As you can see, my slide up there is pretty empty. Year after year, I pretty much just come asking for the basics. I always say, hey, it's just status quo, Matt, punch my numbers in for me. So the only real change that you will see is every third year, we have our external audit, where we have to hire a contractor to come in and audit our health and safety management system. Beyond that, usually I don't really ask for too much. Past ask, of course, was getting that second safety officer, which I am most grateful for. And the other big ask I have had has had to do with safety document management system, taking everything electronic. That ask, as you all know, during our orientations wasn't really Sherry's choice. I love paper, but I know technology is the way we have to go. So my budget basically comes in at $471,000, of which we share with the City of Brooks. About $39,500 is provincial conditional grant that we'll get back, and sales to the City of Brooks is about $235,000. So in total, my ask really comes down to about $196,000 from the county for my department. If I am to speak to my expenditures compared from last year, my expenses are up by about 1.47%. Most of that has to do with wages and benefits. My new safety officer is still moving through the wage grid, so that's a piece of that. And then, of course, pension plan. But primarily, that's where the increase in my ask comes from. I have no capital funding that I need. And if I go through my budget line items, my higher dollar value things, we ask for $8,000 each year for conferences and training for staff. There's 4 of us, which would be $2,000 a piece. But I can tell you that generally I don't spend that money. So I won't promise that this year, but it's most likely. The most the department has ever spent on annual training is $3,850 for anybody that's in the department. That wasn't per individual. Our 5-year average has been $750 for the department itself. So there's a good chance you're going to get about $6,000 of that back. My other higher dollar item would be under the whole IM software line items. We have an MSDS online subscription that we pay about $7,300 for every year. That is for our hazardous products, legislated requirement to make sure that we're keeping our safety documents all up to speed. We have about 400 hazardous products that between the city and the county, that we have to manage the safety data sheets for. And prior to going electronic, that actually meant that we were managing 82 different binders, which truly was an absolute nightmare and required all kinds of our time with wages. So this really is a cost savings to us by sharing that with the city. We have a line item that refers to training workbooks. There's $1,750 there that is just for the ease of ordering training books for the city. If we spend that money, it just automatically goes back to us. It's 100% recoup from the city. And lastly, the other big item, of course, is our annual health and safety meeting. Traditionally, we budget about $3,000 for that, where we come together for one day or one morning, one afternoon, whatever it is for that particular year. All staff focus on training. It's usually interactive, educational. The $3,000 often covers a guest speaker and our meal for the day. 2020, of course, we spent $0 on that because COVID came in and we had to not go forward with our annual safety day, and same thing in 2021. So that was $6,000 in savings for us. If I am to focus on some of our key priorities and accomplishments this past year, probably the biggest thing is the fact that we left e-compliance behind, which was our safety document management system we used for 3.5 years. And we're getting rid of that expense, which was very close to $20,000 a year, transferring everything over into e-compliance. So that has been a huge undertaking and something we've been working on in order to move to Laserfiche. Totally not just a safety department thing. Lots and lots of help from IT. Roberta has been truly a godsend in the process. Stephen, Ariana, Joanne, Jolene, corporate safety services team themselves. So we have got the basics in place for that, but still lots of work to do moving forward, building more forms. Lots of focus on training last year as well, doing different assessment needs for our leadership group, taking some of our training to online, creating all kinds of historical certificates, developed a worker competency program. Process mapping, that was another big one because we're going to Laserfiche. This is another area Roberta helped us with as far as recreating our new processes, some procedure work as well. And we developed a health and safety scorecard that focuses on both our lagging and leading indicators. As we go into 2022, the big thing will be Laserfiche form inventory again. We have to do an internal audit in 2022. We'll continue to work on getting historical training into the system so it's all accessible through electronic searches, and hoping that we can have our annual health and safety day in 2022 as well. If I focus on our disability management side of things, psychological health and safety management program, that was a big hope and wish that we could have got off the ground last year. Unfortunately, COVID came in and interrupted a few things. So it's developed, but it isn't fully vetted yet and ready for implementation. That will be a goal for us in this coming year. Lots of focus on mental health, especially during the COVID side of things. We had all kinds of different initiatives that were put forth. Violence and harassment program is an area of training that we want to focus on this year. We're hoping to bring that to our annual safety day because that one will be best in person. We're working to move all of our reporting for WCB claims into WCB's electronic injury reporting, and trying to get all of our past claims and current into the WCB claims files through Laserfiche as well. Those are kind of my highlights, and I guess I put it to you if you have any questions for me.
Any questions?
Good time for a break. Woohoo! Thank you.
Thank you. 10 minutes? Is that reasonable? Okay. Okay, let's reconvene our meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so the next function is function 11, which is the legislative function. This deals directly with the costs of council. You'll note that under council for 2021, we had the election in there as an expense. That is under account number 2290, and for 2021, we're showing an increase from 21,000 in 2021 to 51,000 for 2022. That is, of course, your election expense is no longer in there, but it is inclusive of the cost of the council retreat and strategic planning session that we would anticipate council will want to engage in early in 2022. Other things that bring to your attention that are changes over the previous year has to do with your computer hardware and software. Of course, with the election in 2021, there was a significant cost that was budgeted for to replace all of the computer equipment and IT equipment that council has access to, and of course in 2022 there isn't any offsetting cost there because that is an expense that was already incurred in 2021. So really it's not much in the way of significant changes overall for the legislative function. If there's some specific questions that you have for that one, we can try and drill down into the detail.
Thank you. Is there any questions from anyone on council? Seeing none, I think we can continue. There may be some later, but that's fine.
Next function is function 12, and this is administration. So this covers off quite a range of areas. Things to bring to your attention. You'll notice under the revenue side, other sales of goods and services. In 2021, we were showing a budget of 112,000. 2022, it's down to 18,900. This was in 2021. That was a contract that we had entered into with the government of Alberta for designated industrial property assessments. That has been peeled away from the county, so that revenue is not going to be coming in. They've taken over that responsibility for the assessments. Going down into the expense side of the equation for administration, the biggest change here is the fact that up to this point in time, for all of 2021, our assessment service has been provided through a contract that has been in place with a third-party service provider. That contract is coming to a close, and what we're looking at doing instead of contracting that service is actually providing the assessment function in-house through a staff position. And I think that's been discussed as well with council, so you should be aware of that. The other changes, of course, to note, again, is just the infrastructure for the hardware and software. Really not too much else to highlight on under the administration function as far as changes from one year to another. If there are any questions that relate to function 12, we can certainly try and address those.
Councillor Johnson, please go ahead. Thanks.
Just look what's going across with the line here. That's quite a variation in salary, wages, and benefits. Like for just adding one person, or how many assessors do you need to take over the contracted portion?
Okay, we have the contract for assessment service runs for another 2 months into 2022, so January, February. We anticipate that it is going to be just one person that we have looking after that assessment function going into 2022.
And there's also the IT co-op position included in that line as well, driving that change.
Thanks.
The other Johnson, what is the savings to the county from moving from the contracted services to in-house staffing?
Do you have that map? I can certainly work that out.
Yeah, I'd say it's in the $25,000 to $30,000 range.
So in the long run, it's a better move to move that person from contract in-house, even though we pay extra costs for other internal things, like pensions and benefits and all the rest. It still makes sense financially.
Yeah, that's inclusive of pension benefits, training. The county already provides the office space, we provide the truck, we provide the gas. Long term, we're hoping that it will be an opportunity in a few years to also bring in a junior assessor. So I'm planting that seed right now for both succession planning and potentially extending the service to our partners in the region.
Lerner, go ahead.
So for the intern for IT, do we get any grants from the government for that, or is it totally on us?
That one's on us.
Ben go ahead, Councillor Chrisman.
Reeve Dirksen, I was just wondering if I could ask Councillor H. Johnson to speak right into the microphone. I'm really struggling with hearing your voice. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm assuming if we extended those services to other partners, that's a cost recovery and net benefit, always. That's the goal, I suppose.
Yeah, that's the long-term idea behind it.
Right. Councillor Screever, please.
When we contracted out the assessments, where were they out of? Where was the contract? Was that out of Lethbridge?
The service is being provided by a firm from Lethbridge right now.
Okay.
Yes.
So bringing it in-house brings the business, the money to our area, which is a good thing, I think.
Any other questions relative to administration? If not, we can carry on, right? Thank you.
Okay, so the next one would be Family Community Support Services. Well, so that's function 51. This is an arrangement that we have entered into in partnership with the other urban municipalities in the area, Grasslands Regional FCSS Services. The county raises funds that are contributed entirely to that organization. The City of Brooks administers the arrangement, but that's a separate agency, and the service is under the direction of a separate board. The next one that we would have is Function 63, Community Services. This one covers off the county's minibus service, and then there's also some funds in there to look after a Safe Communities initiative with the City of Brooks. There is a shared staff position that is part of that Safe Communities initiative. Not too much to highlight here. We are probably at the tail end of the life of the minibus. We don't have plans to replace it in 2022, but it certainly would be an item that we would be coming back to council with for 2023. There is a slight increase in the proposed slight increase in the fee for that service, $2 per ride. It's really pretty much status quo with regards to the minibus service.
Question from Councillor Johnson, please.
If FCSS only includes the salary for the person, where does the funding, what category is that out of, the grants that are given out of FCSS?
Well, it's not just one staff position that is under FCSS. There's a team that's part of that organization. So there's at least 3, if I'm not mistaken, 3 full-time staff for that position. And a lot of what they do is work with other community groups and organizations to flow funds through to those groups as well.
And maybe just as a point of clarification, the one full-time equivalent that council sees showing up under community services is our full-time position for the minibus driver. It doesn't, we don't report on the FTEs of FCSS. They're a separate legal entity, just to be clear.
Okay.
What is the charge for the minibus? You're raising it $2. What are the rates?
Current is $14, going up to $16, and that's door to door, both ways.
Countywide.
Correct.
Cool.
Councillor Screever, go ahead.
Well, I see the increase is budgeted for $2 per projected up until 2025. When is, what would be the maximum we would want to charge for a minibus? I mean, if we're going up to $2 every year budgeting forward, I'm just wondering where do we stop? I like the idea of $20 max, but you know, are we going to just keep? Is that going to keep rolling along? I wonder.
It comes back to the buckets that Matt had up earlier. Is it a service that should be entirely cost recovery, or is there an argument that can be made for it being subsidized from public funds? Right now, we're subsidizing it significantly, and we would certainly like to see it move towards cost recovery to whatever extent possible we can do that. Chances are, if you move it to full cost recovery, you're not going to have any riders, and the service will not be necessary. We feel that it's meeting a need, providing a service that is required in the community right now, and it's a matter of finding that balance between the public and the private funds that should go into providing that service.
Right.
I agree with that, Lane. And I live 2 miles out of town. It costs me almost that much to get a cab. So, I mean, it's a fantastic service for people.
Yeah, I'm glad Councillor Johnson brought that up. You know, a few years ago, we asked the cab companies, what does it cost to get from here to there, and, you know, all over the place. And anybody who is able to use the minibus service, it's a valuable service, and it comes at a very, very low cost to them. Yeah, but there's other ways to travel around as well, right? The minibus service is only available in one spot at a time. I know some communities have like a taxi voucher program. There's some challenges with getting that rolled out and users actually being comfortable shifting to that level of service. But you know, there's always options for how we deliver that transportation service to our ratepayers.
Any other questions or comments with regard to that? And we'll move on. Thank you.
So the next function is function 64, economic development. What has been happening in the past with regards to the economic development program? The county had it in-house, well, probably 4 years ago now. The service and responsibility for it was transferred over to the city of Brooks. The staff involved report to the Joint Services Committee. So what we're showing here is funds that flow from the county to the city. And then there was also funds in here for PEP and Canadian Badlands. Of course, Canadian Badlands is no longer in operation, so we're still showing the funds going out to that Palliser Economic Partnership. Those are the main activities that are happening under your economic development function.
Councillor Johnson, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most important items here. And from my days on the EID board, we had a company called Lanita Lake Newell Economic Development Authority, partnered with the EID, town, and the county. And a direct result of that was the Marshall Drain development, where all those townhouses are over there, the Jager development, where Lake Newell Resort is now, Luter Estates, retirement on the other edge of town there. And that economic development won't work unless everybody's on board, pulling the same way. And it takes a real big effort. And I would really encourage this board to rejuvenate that kind of thinking again and get this area cooking again. That's all I have to say. It's really hard to do. Like most meetings you go to, everybody wants tourism. Yeah, well, that might not happen around here, but there's all kinds of other things that, like we're workers, we're not laying on the beach around here. Yeah, I can't say enough about it. It's one of my pet peeves, pet projects. So that's it.
Thank you. And I would agree that there's few things in this area that will match the efficient and effective use of water in terms of economic development to the tune of, I think the last study I saw was $2,500 to the GDP for every dollar spent on for example, irrigation development even. Those are things that we need to encourage. And of course, that's our partners with the EID, but those are significant initiatives that have a spin-off effect to all of the other initiatives like recreation and tourism and that sort of thing too. So I think I would agree that those are things we need to find ways to encourage those things to move forward as efficiently and as rapidly as they can.
Well, fresh water is it's like white gold in the world right now. And we're blessed with the Bow River. But if you look at the demographics of the Bow River, if everybody pulled their licenses, we'd be in the same shape as the Colorado River. Like there's big licenses that haven't been used. We got to be very mindful of that because that water goes down. And one of the big ones is the indigenous claim, which would get settled. It's the lifeblood of this area, supporting the fresh water, making sure that river is taken care of. Yeah, without it, we're done. That's about the way I can put it.
Thank you. Councillor Holly Johnson.
Are the grants to the Brooks Museum and the EID Scandi Museum in there for tourism? Because I think it's an unusual economic development to have two parks in there.
I guess it's just been a question of which function they should be reported under. We have been providing those in the past and want to continue doing so in the future. It's just a question of where it's best to account for them.
Councillor Short.
There's the two buttons, the one on the side and then one in front where you have to, there you go.
There we go. Better? Yeah, well, technological difficulty to start the day, yeah. With the rec board spending and whatnot, it's easy to see where the money goes, give it to the ag societies and such. I'm looking at the numbers and I'm kind of seeing where it all goes, but what are we getting for our money when we're putting it into economic development? Not obviously we're developing the economic side, but what are we actually doing with the money?
The funds that are flowing to the city of Brooks is paying for positions there. that are out doing what economic development staff do. They are looking to the future, making contacts, trying to bring business and industry into the community. Really, that's the primary function that is happening, the primary activity that's taking place there. The debates go on for quite some time as to how effective economic development efforts are in any community. And we're certainly no exception when it comes to that, but it's been deemed something that is important to the area to try and build for the future. And the question is, are you wanting to be part of that or not? And really what it is, we're looking to the future.
Do we get a report on what's been accomplished in economic development for the money that we send over there?
Yes, they do provide reports. We can certainly, I guess, that information is made available to council. But yes, they do report on a monthly basis to the Joint Services Committee, and that information is distributed to all of the organizations as a part of that group.
Councillor Christman, please.
And then just to add to what Lane has said, it'll be up to us as councillors when we sit on a committee to report back to council what is going on, right? So we have councillors that will be sitting on joint services. Specifically, the question was about joint services, but I want to broaden it out to all committees that we're on. A report is required at the end of the month. I believe it's the second meeting of the month, where on the agenda is committee reports. So just to add to that answer.
Thank you.
Which of course can be in written form or oral. Like it's not necessarily that you have a report written, but you can always give an oral report as well. And I had a question and I just forgot about it. Anyhow, yeah, economic development, it's a difficult thing. I always think that private business knows when there is an opportunity. And anyway, just my 2 bits on that one.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Neil.
Here's an example. I'm dealing with elemental energy or doing a solar farm out there. And just did over coffee in their office, they said, why isn't the Iroquois as inviting as the County of Vulcan? Because the County of Vulcan has made up their minds that they want to cover 60% of their, you could check this out, Matt, to make sure it's true, but of their operating budget by solar. And they've attracted 2 huge, like 10 times bigger than this little thing out here. And they're after more. That's economic development. It's not just some guy sitting in an office making a few phone calls talking tourism. And that took an effort by the County of Vulcan to make the companies feel welcome. Like what they said to me was, sun shines exactly the same here as it does over there. Whoever wants us the most gets us. That's what I call economic development, that kind of stuff. And that takes a council effort, and a Town of Brooks effort, and an EID effort. And a coordinated one would be better. But just one comment. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll carry on. Thank you.
So the next function would be function 71, recreation. We have a number of recreation organizations throughout the county, and there are also recreation boards. For the most part, the funds that the county raises for recreation purposes are made available to the boards and then distributed out to the different organizations. You're showing a revenue there of $9,200. Really what that one is, the GEM Community Association obtains insurance for their facilities through the county. We bill it back, it's showing as a revenue, and then there's an offsetting expense. Otherwise, all of the funds that are raised for recreation purposes come in from taxation, and again, they're made available to each of the recreation boards. We have 3 agreements in place with Rosemary, well, sorry, there are 4 agreements in place, one with Brooks, Rosemary, Dutchess, and Bassano. And the commitments that, and the financial commitments that flow to those communities are in accordance with those agreements. And then there are funds that are raised and flow directly through to Division 4. Division 1, the funds that are raised for Division 1 go to the Rolling Hills Ag Society. There is a separate recreation board for Division 5 and 10. You just appointed members to that recreation board during your organizational meeting. And then there's a recreation board in GEM as well. Those groups operate facilities, provide services, and the county is providing funding for that. There's also a contribution that is made to a recreation reserve fund as well. So everything that is generated from taxation for recreation purposes does not flow directly out to those organizations. There is some that is retained in this reserve account that is intended to be there to help upgrade recreation facilities in the future. That's the purpose for that particular fund. Any questions on recreation?
Councillor Johnson?
If I'm correct, the Division 4 Rec Board sent a request for more funding, and you said it would be addressed at a future council meeting. At Budget 1, I think what the letter read.
Correct. There has been a request to increase the allocation for Division 4.
Any other questions, comments? Go ahead.
Does this include the rec center, Lane? Does this include the JBS center and all the facilities in Brooks?
The funds that flow from the county to the city covers off all of the recreation facilities in the city.
Thank you.
We will have to bring back the request from Division 4.
Go ahead, Councillor Anna.
And Matt, what is it again? Is it 1,600,000 or what is it again that we pay a year to the city of Brooks?
Oh, you're testing me. Give me 2 seconds here. Uh, 2022, the operating component is 523,000. The capital component is 42,000. So 565 for recreation going to the city of Brooks in 2022. Oh geez, now I have to do more math. Per person based on which metric? Population of Div 5 and 10 or county-wide? I'll divide 565 by 7524. Is that the number we're using for population these days, Lane? Or
7502.
02, we dropped. 7536 per capita. Yeah.
Christman, please, go ahead.
Yeah, but keep that in perspective. That's over the entire county, and then we're paying all this other to the other mini munis and to our hamlets, right? So that $75 is very minimum. It's a low number when if you were to refer to it as all that we pay for recreation. No, we're paying, right? So I would suggest that you take that 565,000 and divide that by divisions 5 and 10 population, and that might give you a better comparative, because we are paying for recreation in all the other divisions, correct?
Well, maybe, but I see a lot of auto rates at the rec center. Not division 5 and 10. That thing encompasses everybody. Even hockey games, people from all over the county come in. I got a tough division to represent.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Johnson.
Well, we do have arenas in Rolling Hills, Tilly, rural ones as well. We give substantial money to Bazzano. I'm actually surprised how much that one works out to as well. So we do spend a lot of money on recreation in the county. That's clearly a big expense.
Any other comments, questions? Sounds like we might revisit it someday, but go ahead, let's carry on.
So the next function is going to be library, so that's function 74. This one's fairly straightforward. You, of course, raise funds for library services that are made available to the County of Newell Library Board. The previous council, that was one of the last things that they dealt with during their last meeting, was approving the 2022 budget for the library board. Or sorry, it was actually for Shortgrass Regional Library Services. So there's two different organizations that receive funds from the county, the library board being one, and then Shortgrass Regional Libraries as well. In addition, there is $19,000 that has been included in 2021 for a contribution to the City of Brooks for a culture component, and then there's still funding under the current arrangement going forward for culture as well. That's accounted for under function 74.
Questions, comments?
General government would be function 00. This one just shows how everything flows out and impacts your property taxes. I don't know if you want to drill down into this one right now, or if it would be one that we come back to at the end after you've had a chance to look at all of the budgets and understand how it impacts the bottom line under this particular function. So that's it for the corporate services end. I'm thinking we're on to ag services, and then it would be municipal services.
Yeah, I think IT's up next. Oh, there's Roberta, good timing.
Thank you. Next line. Welcome, Roberta.
I'll clear the space and Roberta can move in.
Please.
Good morning. My first opportunity to say good morning to a new council. It's exciting and nerve-wracking all at the same time. Hopefully I won't keep you too long or bore you too much, but I thought it was what I noticed with orientation, or what you guys had me think about after orientation, was what a challenge it must be for new council. Of course, we have existing council, to come in and make decisions without context. So what I'm hoping to do today is to provide context, and I'll apologize ahead of time to a couple of councillors for maybe repeating some things that you've already know about. In order to do that,
What number is it that we're looking at in our budget?
It's under function 12.
12, okay, thank you.
And it is across other functions, sorry, because you may have noticed that almost every other slide also had some IT, which is making me really nervous, but it's sprinkled throughout all functions. So I'll give you the GL numbers. Would that be helpful, not helpful?
No. IT's weird, right? Well, let's just admit, IT's just weird. Roberta's kind of through all and everywhere, right? So she'll blame Mark for her budget lines going over, and Mark will blame Roberta. Well, that's not how it actually works. So Roberta's actually got a slide deck she's going to run us through. The IT shows up most predominantly in function 12, administration. So if you look at the administration slide, I think on that we said IT projects 204,000, and then we quickly ran away from talking about that so that you wouldn't grill Roberta too hard about the money she's spending there. But IT does show up in each function.
There's kind of a separation. It's much like we have what it takes to run IT as a department, which is under 12, along with any other department that is under 12. But then we have our programs and services, which then that sits under those functions. It's like your cost recovery. We expense the cost of IT under the departments that use that equipment and IT services. So licenses that municipal services have on their devices gets charged to function 32. It's like a cost recovery. User fees, if that helps. Today I was going to review a couple of things. I was going to review the Newell System Integration Project, IBM review, and a communication strategy. That's kind of the foundation of what our current IT program and services is built off of. I want to show you show homes. I was trying to think, how can I encompass and show you all the benefits of this investment from previous council? So I thought, well, you know, when you go look at a house, they show you one unit, and you know that there's hundreds of more that are like that. So I'm going to show you one unit, or a couple of units under here of varying sizes, and know that you can multiply that over and over again to experience and understand the efficiencies. And then, of course, I'm not going to forget to talk about the 2022 budget highlights, because that's why we're here. I have to go way back to 2009, when a corporate strategic priority was set, and it was to implement a single-entry, automated, and integrated system for all information technology system applications. We dubbed it NSIP, Newell System Integration Project. Its purpose, the objectives of this project, was to minimize the number of steps to perform assigned duties, make information more readily available, reduction of manual processes, elimination of duplication of work, balancing input with output. We had all these systems and we were inputting data, but we were never getting any information of value out of it. We wanted to increase efficiencies. We wanted to increase reporting options and achieve greater automation, and of course, system integration. So what did we look like? In 2009, this is what our systems looked like. I know I touched on it briefly at the orientation, where there is duplication of work. So if you look at the financial system, in the financial system is a tax system. And the tax system, you need information about the owners of land and information about the land. Permits also need information about landowners and information about land. So that information was maintained in both of those systems. It had to be a duplicate entry into those systems. We had a financial reporting system, but the integration never worked. We never got any value out of it. We had other integrations, but they were import-export. In other words, they were manual. And we had opportunity for integrations that we weren't taking advantage of. So what do we look like today? This is more what our system looks like today. You're going to see that all of our systems now work together. The financial system owns the information about land, and it owns the information about landowners, and it shares it between those other systems. So it only has to be entered and maintained once. Everything in this large green square is available, mixed and matched, within our single reporting system. We can pull information from any of those systems and display it in a single portal. We do still have silos. We knew from the beginning that we were still going to have a couple of silos, and that's these two systems here. And we've offered a whole bunch of new functionality to the public and to the ratepayers. So what are our show homes? I'm going to give you an example of 4. Automation. We chose to automate, one of the first ones we did was accounts payable. That's where we took the approval process and we automated it. It was important because it impacted all departments across the organization. It just didn't benefit one department, it benefited all of them. We talked about process mapping. Well, we mapped the process for AP, and 39 steps were moved to Laserfiche from staff. We removed the need for filing with the auto workflow, ease of locating invoices, and improved reporting to council. Data only had to be entered once. It goes into Laserfiche using import and export tools that actually populates the batch in the financial system. So nobody has to rekey the information. And that's resulted in an estimated time savings of 60 to 75% for this process. Finance has indicated that 350 hours of service capacity was returned to the AP clerk because of this process. In addition, we incorporated the contractor safety documentation program. That program requires that before we pay an invoice from a contractor, we have to ensure that they have a safety program, they have WCB, and they have insurance coverage. If they don't, and we pay it, and there's an incident, we are responsible to pay for those costs. That's why it's so important. The problem was, one of the issues and challenges we had is who owned it. Should it be finance because they pay the invoice? Should it be the department because they hire the contractor? Or should it be corporate safety? It is safety documentation. When we moved it to system managed and system monitored, that question went away. The system looks after all of that for us. It helps to manage our risk. It also eliminates duplicate requests for contractor safety documentation. For example, if I hire a contractor, I would send them the documentation and ask them to fill it out. If Ag Services also used that same contractor, they too would send the information and ask them to fill it out because we didn't know what each other were doing. Now that documentation is in a common location and we know ahead of time whether that documentation has already been collected for a vendor. There were some unforeseen benefits that we didn't actually expect to see. One is cash flow assistance, and I'm sure if Matty wants to share anything, he can. Document locating for purposes other than AP, for like grant reporting. It really speeds up that process of collecting that information. And accountability. We have visibility of that process from beginning to end. If we need to know where an invoice is, we know where an invoice is. We can see exactly where it sits through that process. The second show home I want to talk about, and you heard Sherry talked about it, about the core audit, where it's an external audit that has to be done every 3 years. The last one was done in 2020, and the auditor in their final report said this as a strength. They said there is a strong electronic preventative maintenance program in place that is being used consistently. Benefits of using a preventative maintenance program include improved equipment and system reliability, reduction of unexpected downtime, decrease in expensive parts replacement, extended equipment life, improved resale value, and better parts inventory management. That reflects directly on our costing system and, of course, our fleet services, who use that, has taken such ownership of that program. Another show home I want to talk about was mobile and public access. Part of the system integration project was public access to documentation. Previously, what we did with the website is we would go in and we would post the documents on all the different pages within the website. When those documents changed, we had to remember to go and update all those documents, find where they were on what pages throughout the website. Now everything's central. It's in the public access. It's available. We do link to it from other pages, but all we do is update that one document and it updates it everywhere on the website. It reduces the amount of time required in all documents. If you didn't want to go search the pages to find it, you know you can go to the public documents and find any document that we have posted and made available for the public. And the final thing, we talked a little bit again about this at council orientation, about bringing office efficiencies out to the field. And one of the ways we do that is with mobile access, Laserfish app and mobility. Office efficiencies now are offered to field staff. It's reduction in travel time. I could give you several examples of that. Gravel tickets is one, pre-post trips is another. Timesheet entry is another example of where those things can now be done out in the field where before they had previously been brought in the paper form. Everyone with a user license and a county-issued mobile device has the ability to access the Laserfish repository from the field. And we have a mobile office. We can approve invoices and do other work processes from anywhere. IBM review. This was the next thing. Arrived about 2013. IBM came in, they did a review. Their recommendation were these 20 projects. They wanted them completed. Two, the IT in red and the green directly relate to the supporting of the 7 classification layers. The ones in blue.
Just wondering, could we make that a little bigger? I can't read it.
You can also pull up this slide deck from AllNet. I added it first thing this morning. So under IT, you should be able to pull it up from your agenda in AllNet. Through AllNet. I'll kick it out in a quick email, and you can open it up from there.
Do you want me to wait for a minute, or? Sure, I can hang on.
All right, it should be arriving in your inbox. My apologies.
I need to apologize. He didn't get it till yesterday. Are we good? Okay, thank you. This is the IBM review that took place in 2013, of which they made 20 recommendations of projects. These were the projects they related. Everything in red and green relate to supporting the 7 classification layers. Everything in blue was more a management or a process project that needed to be looked after. I wanted to share this experience. One of the things they identified were single points of failure within the IT structure, meaning that if a core switch failed, we only had one core switch. I know you don't maybe know what that is or care. The point is, it's like a bridge that connects an island to the mainland. We only had one. And if the bridge broke down, people from the island could not get to the mainland, and people from the mainland could not get to the island. That's kind of the thing. We had numerous points, single points of failure. Out of this review, after this review, or a part of this review, I was promoted to Director of IT. Within the first 2 weeks, we had 1 of 2 servers fail. It had all our major systems on it. Our financial systems, our costing systems, our GIS systems. We were without those systems for 3 days because we had to order the part had to come, we had to install the part, and we had to get everybody up and running. I remember that because it was very stressful for me within those first 2 weeks of employment. Part of this project was to replace those, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So the show home, I'm going to talk about GIS. So you'll see that GIS is number 6. So I'm going to talk about that as the show home. Part of the review was IBM came in and interviewed stakeholders, and this is what the stakeholders told them. There are many serious concerns with the existing GIS system, including significant frustration among key users, which are having a negative impact on the productivity of many users. That was the review. So what did we do? We restructured our GIS. We did live updating. You'll see GPS units. You'll see there's a couple of those in capital budget this year. We used to, how it would work is the GPS units would come in, we'd upload information, it'd go out to the field, they'd collect, they'd bring it back to the office, we'd download the information and make it accessible. Now we do live updating in the field. We've also expanded the opportunity for people to collect using the iPhones to do data collection. We have an internal web map, we have an external web map, and we have integrations between our GIS system and other systems. So what do users say today? In 2020, we sent out a survey to GIS stakeholders. We had 10 respondents, and you can see the response about the quality of the products and services have now improved considerably. High quality to neither high nor low quality seems to be the biggest number of responses. We reduced our staff from 2 to 1, yet we increased what we looked after from 56 feature classes to 167. We estimate a cost savings of $100,000 per year by that reduction of staff for an approximate saving to date of $600,000. I never thought these words would ever come out of my mouth, but I am very proud to say that we got 10th place. And that was a big deal, and this is why. It was nice to have the internal measurement from the stakeholders to say how the program had changed or improved in their eyes, because they're our customers and that's what's important. This was an external evaluation of our program. It's the Geospatial Maturity Index, and it's offered by the Public Sector Digest. They compiled a panel of experts about GIS. They developed a survey of between 77 and 83 questions, depending on the year. We submitted that, they do an evaluation, and they grade our program, benchmark it against other places. In 2018, 146 Canadian organizations participated in this survey. The County of Newell came in first in organizations of our size and 11th overall. In 2019, there were 127 organizations, 104 of them from Canada and 23 from the US. We came first in organizations of our size and 11th overall. We held our spot. In 2020, there were only 90 organizations, including Canada, 7 US states, and 1 Australian state. We came in first in organizations of our size and 10th overall. The next thing I wanted to review with Council, and you've seen this when we did the Council orientation, this is the communication strategy. I know Lane talked about the public participation and communication policy and the requirement to have one, and our policy outlines our strategy, and this diagram is a representation of that. You can see that the county initiates contact with the public through Newell Notify, the website, YouTube, and live streaming. The public can initiate contact with the County of Newell using Newell Connect, and either of us can initiate contact using social media. So the show home for public engagement and communication is the budget narrative, meaning this is what communications, in 2015 we did 0. There was none. We had a high in 2019 of service requests submitted asking for communications of 302, and 2020 were 268 service requests. You can see the numbers. These are all listed in our 2020 budget narrative of the number of engagements we've had, the number of posts that we've made, and our interaction with the public. So I guess we can, unless there's questions, does anyone want to talk about or ask questions about what was presented?
Any questions?
No?
We're good for now?
Then we'll get into the meat and potatoes, which I love. 2022 budget. There has been talk, it was asked about the change in the salary line under function 12. It does include an IT intern co-op student. I wasn't sure what term was used in the budget. I'll also talk about the capital firewall replacement and high definition imagery. There are other things in there. I think Matt talked about our strategy we're using for printers to let them kind of live their life, and if we need to replace them, we will. I've talked a little bit about the GPS units and how they're used. And then I'm just gonna sum everything up because I know people worry that IT is complex and hard to understand, but actually IT is very simple. And the budget, I think I want to reduce it down to a couple of sentences that sums it up. First off, let's tackle the big one first. I really don't like when I have faced with a problem that I say, hey, I need more money or I need more people. That makes me uncomfortable. When I first started to think, hey, I think we need more people, I thought, well, let's determine first and ensure that it's not a performance issue. Is it just my perception or is this something that I can support? I did a service capacity review. I talked to you guys a little bit about the goalposts, which are those capital, the IBM projects, which is right here under 2015. That's when they started. And then the other goalpost, meaning time has passed and it's time to replace those assets. That's this other goalpost over here. The blue bars show you what is happening or what has happened between 2015 and 2020 with all the other programs and services that we deliver. The number of backup jobs have increased. The number of devices that we manage and maintain have increased. The number of feature classes we look after has increased. Communications were non-existent in 2015, and you can see that they've been increasing. Service requests, the trend line indicates it's increasing, which I think is quite a feat considering that our devices have increased. Number of virtual machines, our VMs that we look after, that's increased significantly. Yet at the same time, our staff has actually reduced. We used to have 7, we now have 6. I'm not sure that this number includes, we also had in budget for a co-op student at that time, which we didn't utilize. I learned a new word taking lean training. It's called inflexibility or MRI. What it really means is overburdening. And what it means in this sense is when more work is assigned than can be completed in the time available. I feel like we've hit this point of inflexibility. We've asked our staff, the IT staff, to do more with the same amount of staff. And I think we've reached a point that we've become inflexible. I've also looked back, when I was looking back at the IBM review, it was interesting, I looked at a slide that they had done a proposed chart, organizational chart for the IT department. They had 11 IT staff recommended on their chart. But with all the efficiencies that council and the organization has brought, I really feel that we didn't need that. We've done quite well with the staff we had using those efficiencies. I think we've hit a point now where I would hope that council would approve a co-op or an intern student to help us with the workload that we have. I thought, okay, I've showed we've got more work, but does that really indicate that we're struggling? We do KPIs, key performance indicators, every month. Every month I have a one-on-one meeting with my staff. We set a target that we wanted to remain under 50 open service requests every month. So every month I go in and I measure how many open service requests do we have. We've been doing this for 3 years. In 2019, you're going to see we met our target every month, except for July, who knows, but I think I was on vacation and didn't measure that. In 2020, you're going to see we started pretty good, and then we ran into trouble in March. Anyone know what happened in March? Yeah, COVID, in case you didn't. So we struggled because we had more work. We had to get everybody remote. We had to make sure to get the live stream going. We ran into some trouble. We got her kind of back under control again, and then at the end of the year, we were running into trouble again. You can see 2021, the only month that we met that target was in May. June and July, I didn't even have time to measure it, and it wasn't because I was on vacation. And May, we did a concerted effort. We said that's our priority this month, is we're going to do service requests. So I think it does indicate that we're struggling to try to meet that target. That's what that is, a key performance indicator. I don't know if there's any questions about that before I move on.
Councillor Short and then Councillor Screever.
Do you expect that the service level right now is affected by COVID still, and will that drop once COVID's over? And then I guess with this intern, is that a temporary position that might fill that gap? And
hopefully, if I miss the question, you make sure to bring me back to it. COVID impacted us. We were in a really good position. I've got to say, I think it was tremendous. The direction we were going for mobility and accessibility to our data and our systems really minimized that. We already had a live stream functionality, we just hadn't used it. So a lot of the things with going live stream was to get council educated on how to do it, make sure to set it up on the systems, understand how we were going to get it and move it out to the public. The biggest challenge was getting people to work remotely, not because of capabilities. Systems were available, it was the hardware. So we had to make sure everybody had hardware. That was the blip. We had to get, we already had existing hardware, we just had to get it in place so people could work from home if they had to, or work in the office if they needed to. So ongoing, there's not too many ongoing, other than we want to be able to continue to be responsive if the need arises. So where it's going to impact us next year is that we used existing equipment that was old. We need to replace it, right? We need to replace that equipment so that it functions properly for those who have to work from home. So the only impact COVID at this point is we're going to have increased number of devices to set up next year. And that's one of the areas we're looking for assistance from a co-op student to assist with the refresh program and take some of that workload off of our technicians. It could be temporary, I don't know. I think that I would like to try it for a year and see what happens, because like you talked about, the goalposts are up, but when that goalpost is gone again and we get that quiet time for the 3 years in there, you know, maybe we won't need it, but you can also see the trend line. The trend line is that everything is increasing, so I have some concerns about that. But I think 1 year approval, if it's conditional that way, and we experiment with that and we see what the impact, I think that would be a reasonable thing. Hopefully that answered. Good.
So you probably answered the question, but is that the new IT co-op person, would they kind of take up that slack? Then I see that our open, what our actual is and what our projected is, will that person take up that slack then for the most part?
Where I think it would be useful and help my staff. My staff have been here a long time. There were two positions on that chart that IBM presented. One was a network administrator and one was a server administrator. Those are pretty specialized positions. Our two technicians, one has taken on the role of server administrator and one has taken on the role of network administrator with contract specialization help when required. At the same time that they're filling that role, they're also the technicians. They do the service requests, they do the refresh programs. What I'm hoping to do is to alleviate some of that for them. They also do the preventative maintenance program. So they're wearing a lot of hats. Where I think it would save time, one of our technicians, about not quite, I'd say at least a third of his time, if not more, is on the refresh program. 600 and some hours to 800 and some hours are spent on service requests, dealing with workstations, or doing the refresh. That would bring back 600 to 800 hours back to that position to do other things. The other area is administering the service request desk. Right now, the IT administrator does that. She also has other roles. She does administrative support, she does the inventory, she does the communications. There's a lot of things that role and that position does too. I'm looking to relieve some pressure from that position as well. So ideally, at the same time, you want them to gain something. They're coming here to learn. We want to give them something. So maybe we can have them participate in one of the projects so that they get a higher level and they actually can grow a little bit while they're here. That's the plan.
Just to point out, the IT co-op being proposed would be an 8-month position. I'd like to see that persist. I think your co-op, your interns, it's a pretty good ground to develop staff. And then, like I said earlier, once you find a good one, you latch on to them and keep them for the long term, right?
Good to move on? Next, capital. Most IT equipment is on a 5-year replacement schedule. We talked about the bridges. That is really, it's interesting, even the replacement of this building. The longer time span between replacement, I think the greater that difference between what you put away and how much it's going to cost you. IT equipment usually is a 5-year replacement. You can stretch it to 6 or 7, but not without risk. And that risk is downtime. This is kind of indirect costs of IT downtime. There's lots of indirect costs. It's refocusing, it's getting back to what you're doing. And it was kind of interesting, a Washington Post study on how disruptive that can be. But downtime costs a lot. There's one organization in town that I actually inquired because I was kind of curious what their downtime was, and it's $500 a minute. We are not that standard. That's not our size. What our business is not equivalent to that, but there is a cost to downtime for us. This is an estimate of cost of downtime costs that was calculated by the County of Newell at the request of one of our potential cyber liability insurance, an application we made in 2018. As part of our disaster recovery plan, we had to calculate this. And this is what our calculation was. This was sent to the subject matter experts for their input. They had specific things that they were to consider when they went into calculating this. And this is what our cost of downtime is based on the individual and different systems. Specifically, what we've asked this year, the biggest cost, 200,000 is, no, 120,000 replacement for the firewalls. It falls into the perimeter of the 7 classification layers. It is our protection between our network and the external world. That's its job. And we actually are budgeting for 2. We're budgeting for 2. If one goes down, the other picks up, which minimizes that downtime. Security services, that's kind of a part of it. If you look at what the estimated cost is, $120,000 maybe doesn't look so bad over a course of 5 to 7 years. So the current firewalls were purchased in 2015 as part of the IBM project. The firewalls currently function well, but firmware updates beyond version 9 are no longer available. That's part of the reason why we have to replace IT equipment. Is imagine these organizations that are putting out new equipment, IT equipment all the time. They have to maintain and support that on an ongoing basis. So what they do is they get to a certain point where they've grown and they've got too many versions out there to securely support them all, that they stop supporting some of them. And that's part of the reason why you have to keep on that replacement schedule. Any questions about the firewall?
So we need 2 firewall protections, and just because one is down, if one is down, is that taken care of in-house or is that taken care of by outside personnel?
The firewall is the perimeter between inside the building and outside of the building. It impacts those of us outside of the building as much as it impacts, actually more than it impacts those inside of the building. If you're inside of the building, you won't be able to go outside of the building, meaning you won't be able to go on the internet. You won't be able to go to AllNet. You won't be able to go to the website. You won't be able to go, MSDS sheets will not be available to you. Oh, sorry, Ellen.
And how long would that be downtime? Let's say one breaks down. How long, on average, would it take to get this firewall back up, if you will? And is that done in-house or is it done from contracted services? I guess I should have asked.
It depends. It depends what the problem is. If it's something that we can look after, then we do. So we would first go look at it and we would determine, is it a problem that we can look after? If it's a hardware problem and we have to order a part, just like my example earlier, when you only have one and it breaks down and you need to wait for a part to come, that could be days for it to come. If it's, sometimes it might be something more complex, then we can look after, and we need to bring someone specialized in, and then we use our contracted services funds to bring somebody in to look at that. We currently do have 2 firewalls, yes, so we're just replacing the 2 that we already have. It's not an increased service, and I should have mentioned that, my apologies.
Go ahead, thanks.
Last one, and I should have mentioned this. There was a question from council about high definition imagery, and I should have assured them an answer was coming. So a little late, but an answer is now here. So, or hopefully the answer that you need is here. So the GIS Stakeholders Committee, we have, they meet, we determine a GIS 5-year plan, things they have identified as important from operational perspective. It is my responsibility to put it in budget. So the high definition imagery, we currently have some for hamlets. It was done in 2009. It probably should have been done before now. That's quite a bit of time that has gone by already. I gave you an example. I thought it's important to see what the difference is. We do aerial photos of the county. We do that in partnership with a larger group. We kind of go with the needs of that larger group. High definition we don't need across all of the county, but it has value operationally in those more urban areas. So you can see the difference in the imagery between the 2. And then I'm going to ask Mark to elaborate on the benefits to operations. Mark?
Yeah, I think with high definition imagery for the hamlets, it really is operations. It also relates to engineering, visibility from the workspace, the office space, the desktop, versus having to drive half an hour, 45 minutes out to see something potentially that could just have been a desktop review from the office is efficient. Curb, gutter, sidewalk, manholes, water valves, we can see all of these things in some of these high definition aerial photos. Fire hydrants, for example, as well. We are GPSing all the locations of all of these things, but it's nice to see that. If there was a water line leak or a service issue, you would see the asphalt repair on the desktop review from having the high definition imagery. You might get it out of the higher elevation imagery that we do more frequently and in partnership with other agencies, but some of this detail proves to be valuable just from the desktop. Also benefiting from this is planning and development. They can now see the buildings and the structures that have been put up on properties that may or may not have had permits, that may or may not need permits. Just various things like that that really help staff from an office perspective, particularly here. We're not the city of Brooks where it takes you, less than 5 minutes to drive from one end of the city to the other end of the city. If we can do something at the desk, it makes a lot more sense than sending somebody 15 minutes down the road to drive 15 minutes back. That's not efficient whatsoever. So if there's any other thoughts on high definition imagery, I definitely do my best to try, but that's really the nuts and bolts of it.
How often is this updated? Is it live, or is it, you know, as far as the update to the photograph, are we talking real time here, or?
No, Roberta already said the last time we did this was in 2009. And so all we have is like the snippets around each of the hamlets and maybe a few hundred meters outside of that. I think we also did Emerson when we did that high definition. So that gives a real good overview of the park and stuff. And lots of times, from an operational perspective, the timing of the year is something different as well. Most everybody loves to see a green, lush image. I'm sorry, I like to see through those trees and see those sidewalks, see those curbs, see those fence lines and everything else. So before the leaves come out or after the leaves fall off, definitely not when it's all snow covered, and definitely not when big chunks of it are missing because of green foliage growing across it. So no, we are not live. We don't have live satellite imagery like NASA may be projecting or anything like that. If some of you know how to get that so we can tie it to our web map, then maybe we can save $50,000. But snapshot in time, we went through extensive changes in the hamlet of Scandia, in the hamlet of Tilly, through the local improvements of doing all of their water, wastewater infrastructure, replacing sidewalks, curb gutter and whatnot in those communities. So we've got those snapshots of where they were and where they are now. It doesn't need to be the 5 years because we're not changing things that frequently. The city of Brooks is changing big infrastructure like that regularly. Every year they do a series of local improvements. They do water repairs, sewer repairs, other projects and whatnot, and we just don't do that often enough, I guess. So we just kind of felt that we're really beyond a 10-year period when we've done it. This would be a good time to catch it up and keep that timeline going. So there's lots of good stuff on Google Earth and whatnot, but that means we got to start pulling our information somewhere else to overlay things and whatnot as well. But they have a great series of timelines, but generally their photos are our photos because they like to sell them as much as they can to make as much profit.
So just to clarify, so let's say there's a hydrant leaking, or there's a sidewalk split, or whatever problem there may be. How does that normally get reported to you? So if you went with, there's a problem somehow, it's not live, right? So if it's leaking a faucet, you wouldn't be able to see that, right?
Yeah, unless by chance it was leaking the same point in time the air photo was flown, processed, and sent back to us. What we rely upon with that is everyday customer service requests through Newell Connect, phone call to the office, or anything like that. Or perhaps an operator catches it when they're doing their daily routine driving around. NRSC is contracted to do our operations for water, wastewater. Any of those leak detection things, we'll definitely talk about that in my presentation. But those are the kinds of things that we're always after. But yes, the photo is just a snapshot in time.
Short.
What method are you using for the photography? Have you done a price comparison between drone or airplane, or however you're doing it?
We've done some of that internal, but until we put that out for procurement purposes through tendering, we won't know exactly what we're going to get. We might get people coming to us to do it through aerial photography, using a drone, using a plane, or maybe there's some other technology out there as well. I think that really leads into another discussion that I think we've kicked the dead horse the last 10 years probably over drones. Everybody wants one. Nobody wants the license to fly it. Nobody wants to do the
Nav Canada planning to fly it because now you're a commercial operator of a drone and there's lots of regulation and restrictions and things, privacy issues as well. We've had that discussion around the table as to whether we get in or out. Fire and Emergency Services would love to have one for surveying of incidents, particularly the big Patricia fire. We would like to have one for flying the gravel pits and stockpiles every year for our reports that go to Alberta Transportation. Todd might want to have one for surveying a field for weeds or whatever. We're just not confident that we would utilize it to its maximum potential because there isn't a single one of us that needs it enough to use it daily. Now, we know that the Eastern Irrigation District has a drone. We've talked to them about doing some stuff for us. Otherwise, it's nice to just be able to phone up a couple engineering firms, get a price quote, get them to get out there, fly it. They process this stuff overnight because there's additional costs in software to have to process that stuff. They orthorectify 3D imagery and stuff. They get that stuff done. Some of them use overseas companies to do it. So quite literally, they can send it out at the end of the day. First thing in the morning, it's sitting on their desk and they can deliver us the full image or the report by the end of the next business day. So the turnaround time that some of those guys have access to is incredible. If we did that stuff in-house, I think there's some time to do some of that processing, which who owns it? Where does the service capacity come from? And what's it really going to cost us? Or what else do we fill the gaps with to keep somebody else busy?
And Dan, or Councillor Short, sorry. Not very good at the formals. Anyway, just to let you know, it's hard to get budgetary quotes because it's time that people have to put in, and there's no guarantee that it's even going to be approved by council. And then even if it is approved by council, if it's a certain amount, you have to get comparable quotes, RFP. So we tend to not want to, I did get 2 quotes, just to let you know. It's not, but they varied very much. They went between 20,000 and 50,000. So 50,000 went in the budget until we can get a comparable. It may be less than 50, but those were the 2 budgetary quotes I received, one for 20 and one for 50. So we put the 50 in.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, we'll carry on. Eh?
I'm almost done.
Oh, you're done?
The big summary. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So this is my conclusion to all of this, and I hope you all agree that IT budget is actually very simple. Its purpose is to sustain the structures related to the Newell System Integration Project, the IBM projects, the communication strategy, the 7 classification layers, and operational needs. It's a strong foundation. I'm very proud of the foundation, and I hope everybody at the County of Newell, including Council, is proud of this foundation because it allows us to introduce additional functionality with no additional cost and assist in lowering costs related to other functions. And I can give you a couple of examples. With Laserfish, we wanted to move the efficiencies out to the field. We had full licenses. They didn't need full licenses, and we didn't have enough full licenses. Rather than buying more, we were able to trade those in and get what's called participant licenses, which are cheaper, and we got more of them. That allowed us, at the same dollar value, to expand usage of Laserfish out in the field. An example of saving, and Sherry talked about this, e-compliance, a reduction of $20,000 in Function 14's budget. That's using Laserfish again. We were able to convert what was done in e-compliance. We built the forms in Laserfish, and that we were able to remove that $20,000 from the budget this year. And that's leveraging what we've already invested in and what we've built. And there's a lot more that we can do. And I'm excited, and hopefully, you guys can share that excitement moving forward in the things that are there. That's it for me.
Thank you, Roberta. Any questions or comments? Councillor Christman, go ahead.
Maybe just a comment. Roberta, I've watched you over the last 8 years with this department, and I really appreciate the depths that you go to explain to us why you're doing what you're doing. The analogies are on point for me anyway. Yeah, where would we be without the technology department? And it's all throughout the budget, you're right. But without that foundation, we would be so far behind in what we do here. So thank you from my perspective.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you too. I think to sit, really to think about this in practical terms, it's a matter of everything being able to feed into the same system and then back out again to create efficiency without, it's redundancy for sure, so that there's protection and also the matter of retaining information and a history as people change even, eh? I mean, this, I don't understand this, but what I do understand is the importance of redundancy and the importance of usable information, because I think probably in our own operations, we've all been able to collect information, but then what do you do with it? It becomes useless to you unless it's all somehow integrated. And I think the energy and the vision that's gone into using technology to actually get something done is impressive. And so thank you for that. Yeah.
That's good. Matt, you want your driver's seat back?
I think we all want our lunch seat. I know that lunch has arrived, is in the council room, so if it's a good time to break.
Perfect time to break for me. That's good. It's 5 after 12. How long do we want to take? Half hour, 45 minutes? 45? Back at 1:45? Okay, thank you.